Coming up on Downloaded, stolen IDs. Is yours next? Are your rights being eroded in the name of national security? Can you trust those guys at Google? And why is Facebook introducing hashtags? All that and more on this episode of Downloaded. Welcome to Downloaded. This is the show where we gather the most opinionated voices in the tech field today. Focus all that energy on the stories that are impacting the tech world. I'm your host, Jim Lauterbeck. I'm super excited about the guys who are here today. Well, first of all, I call it guys, but it's Bob Suicide. It's actually a girl, but I could call you a guy, right?
Totally.
Suicide girl, gamer, geek, model, super. You got to check out this poster of hers from 2010. Is just amazing. It's the iconography is awesome, and it's actually for sale for $10 still. So great to have her. And Adi Kamdar, who's an activist at EFF. And a fan of delicious things, so I found out, is also here. So it's great to have these two guys here. So we're talking a little bit about a couple of security issues that came out this week, cybersecurity and other things happening. First one, this is just a weird story. Celebrity credit reports that were stolen by these ID thieves, put online from free websites. Get a little load of the people that they sort of highlighted. Beyonce, Ashton Kutcher, Britney Spears, Trump, Palin, Al Gore. First of all, how do you think they came up with these names? Bob, what's the deal here?
Well, I think there's a little bit of they clearly picked politicians and douchebags. But at a certain point, there's also, because the way that you access a credit report, there's that multiple choice kind of questions of where were you born, what's your mother's maiden name. It's clearly people you can probably find the most information on. Clinton probably has a lot in some legal
Right, we know the first pet's name, we know all that stuff, right? That's a good point. You can use that personal information a lot more. And it's interesting. Is it, Adi, is it becoming easier and easier to nab this personal data?
Kind of. I mean, people are putting more and more information out there. Celebrities are one thing because their information's, out there by definition. That's what a celebrity is. But I don't know, sometimes, do you ever Google search yourself? Is that a thing people do?
People definitely Google search themselves.
It's crazy how much information I've put out there, or other people have put out there about me.
Let's Google search our producer, Roger Chang, right now.
There you go.
See what we find. He may not like this. Some dentist came up in Dublin. Sorry, Roger. It's interesting, but who's responsible here? Are we responsible for protecting our own corporate data, our own personal data? Are the corporations responsible for the data? Is it a shared responsibility? Is there an answer, Bob?
I don't know. I'm fairly negative in my viewpoint. There's a certain point where it's like, is there a responsibility? If you apply responsibility to someone,
right.
I'm giving a company my information. That company is responsible for it. But if you build something, for lack of a better term, idiot-proof, they're going to build a better idiot. Somebody's going to get in.
Yeah.
And with everything online and in databases, you can add as many firewalls, you can make it as protected and secure as possible. Eventually, if they want in bad enough, if they want the information, they're going to get to it. So how much responsibility can you place on that?
Yeah. You guys are thinking about this a lot, I know, over at the EFF. What do you guys think? What do we do with this data, and how do we make sure that we can keep using it in a way that works without losing everything?
I think two of the big things are we need transparency in these processes and control. So just this week, or just last week, Facebook announced that they're working with a bunch of data brokers to give you better targeted ads. So it's no longer like, oh, I like puppies and Nickelback on Facebook, therefore I'm going to get the Nickelback dog, the puppy back ad. They're working with data brokers that take your information about where you shopped, where you go grocery shopping, where you click online, what ads you look at on different sites. And the key there is, do I know how I'm being targeted, and how can I opt out? And I think it's up to Facebook as a socially conscious company, somewhat, to make that process easier and to work with these companies to make that process easier for the consumers.
But they are in business to actually gather as much corporate data, personal data as they can, and serve you ads, right? So isn't there sort of a cross purposes happening there?
Yes, there is a sort of cross purposes, but I think it can, there's a sort of privacy creep it can get like more and more invasive until it gets to a point where you become numb to a certain extent, and then you get used to it. And at a certain point, you got to put your foot down and say, okay, maybe this is going to happen, but we as a consumer need a little more either say or a little more power, a little more ability to opt out.
Yeah, so data, giving up data is kind of like playing strip poker. All of a sudden you're naked, right?
All of a sudden.
Man, I don't know. I think this is a big, big deal. I thought, maybe I still do, like biometrics is a great way around this, right? So doing passwords, doing all this. I think, why not? Why not use biometrics to uniquely identify yourself?
I think why not in the sense that it would be awesome. I love the science behind it. I love the idea. I love that that is our future, is the hand and makes the doors go whoosh. That's what we want. But again, it goes back to if you make something idiot-proof, they will make molds of your thumb.
Well, that's the next story, which I think is hilarious. These guys, what did they do? They made fake fingers in a hospital. This is like the fake person. It's like, oh yeah, we hired my daughter to come in and be a nurse, but she doesn't ever show up. We just have a plastic finger made up that we put on the scanner. I mean, who can? I mean, this is.
You gotta admire their resolve and their effort.
They really don't want to go to work.
Where do you get fake fingers made up?
Brazil. I mean, like, this
story
is
takes place in Brazil,
just on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Well, so one of the issues with this is with biometrics, and we deal with a lot of this, is it's more than just fingers and faces now, and like eyes. It's cameras can identify you by your gait, by how you walk, or by like the certain temperature reads of you. Like the human body, as technology gets more and more advanced, has more and more like unique signatures, and when that's tied to a single person, that means the nice thing about passwords is, or passphrases or whatever you use, is that you can change them if you get compromised. Right. You can't change your fingerprint. You can't change you probably can change your walking pattern maybe with enough time, but there's certain things about you that are just set in stone, and that's where the single point of failure is.
Well, but if they're set in stone, there's a privacy issue there, right? Because once you know that, you have these cameras that can pick you up, but there's also a sense of then nobody can pretend to be me, right?
Sure. But for example, the FBI has a huge facial recognition database, and when they start matching that information with other information about you, and when as we're seeing with current cybersecurity talks, when the government starts sharing information between agencies, all of a sudden it's okay. Now you have this complete profile of me, and I don't really have a say as to how it's used. It begins to pass these sort of constitutional boundaries that we hold. Yeah,
that they hold it. No, I hear you. Would you, Bob? What do you think about the biometric thing? Would you use biometrics? Do you think that's a solution for some of the stuff?
I think it is on a certain level. I think it would stop a lot of people in their tracks, or at least make them think for a little while. And I would use it because I think it would be cool. And on a certain level, I'm not worried about my fingerprints being on file in the FBI because I never really leave my couch. So.
Well, and when you do, you just come to another couch.
Exactly, an exact replica of the couch I have at home.
We did that just for you. We want to make you feel
at home. I really
You
appreciate
know where this story scares me, and I don't know if you got a chance to see the picture. They've got a picture from the civil municipal court where they actually have the fingers or the thumbs up there. But you know what scares me for this? So I use Clear. Do you know Clear?
Yeah.
So this is a way to get through basically so I can jump the security lines at airports. The way it works is it sticks this little smart chip in there. It's got my picture on it, but they never look at the picture. And I put down my finger, and then it identifies me, and they walk me to the front of the line, and I go right through. With one of those little fingers from Brazil, I can be anybody I want. It was actually kind of cool because people can, no, it's not cool. It's actually weird.
I think it's great. I think it's amazing. I would watch that court case. I would love to see that.
It would be an interesting court case.
Yeah, and it's on a certain level. I mean, you have to admire the dedication, the amount of work that goes into getting out of work.
So, I mean, if you can replicate this stuff anywhere, I know the amount to get out of work. I'm just going to make these fake fingers. But if you can come up with these sort of biometric mimics, I guess that's a long. Say that 3 times fast. Then how are we going to use biometrics as a way to identify people? And so I was reading something from David Brin last night. David Brin, the science fiction writer, and he says we need physical verification for the first time of these biometric signatures. And he said, who should do it? Which I thought was great. Banks. We think about having a bank branch where you go in and they actually physically verify that you're you. Because what do banks do, right? All banks do is they basically verify that you are who you are, so you get loans and things like that. What do you think? Was this a new place for banks?
I don't know, given what's been going on with our banks right now. I don't know.
You're saying you don't trust banks.
I don't know if I trust banks, but I also, part of technology and how it gets invented as far as the public is concerned is there has to be, a need, and there has to be, but I don't think that the public would be as receptive to the idea of giving the banks the say on them as a person.
Well, why not? We do already. Adi, do we need that physical place where we can verify our biometric existence?
Not yet. I don't think so. As of now, there are security mechanisms that are strong and that aren't, tied to a single person or tied to, like I said, things you can't change. And I'm not sure if banks are the right place to do this.
Yeah, this puts a whole new spin on the whole pull my finger thing. I had to get that joke out there. I'm sorry. You were saying.
It's putting all your eggs in one basket again, too. That if somebody were to hack a bank, which people right now are inclined to do,
doesn't it?
then everything that you are as a human being and all of your financial records are in one place. So it doesn't seem the most comforting place to put me as a human being.
You bring up the hacking of banks. I'm going to go totally off script here for a minute because I just want to talk about the whole Chinese hacking story and the thing that's. We talked about this on one of our last downloads, but a lot has developed since then. Right, a lot of this corporate hacking and statewide hacking. Adi, what do you think about that as this story develops? Are we going to see real cyber war here?
No.
No.
So I think cyber war is just a bunch of saber rattling.
Yeah.
It's perpetuating this sort of doom and gloom existence. I think we need to be aware of cyber threats and of issues of hacking, but calling it war, calling it this big national security issue. It is to some extent, but it's not like, people are really suffering or dying.
So why do people go to war? It's for treasure, right? It's for taking over land, it's for olive groves, it's for port access. But if you think about war now and the treasure that exists now, the treasure is very virtual, and it's information, and it's how to build that product. It's how to do a car engine a better way. It's how to build a router, which basically put 3Com out of business. It's how to do all these sort of information technology. And what we're seeing stolen in many ways, whether it's China or whoever else, are these corporate secrets of making products and information. And to me, that's as much treasure as the olive grove or the port access. I don't know. I think this is war. What do you think, Bob?
I think it is war on a different front, and it would be nice to see the effort that we put into physical war being put into this technological space, as far as protection and advancement and things like that.
Right, one stealth bomber, put that value into some of this stuff, right?
Exactly.
The issue is, I think, what we saw with physical war, especially with, post 9/11 war, is here we have this, sort of amorphous enemy, this doom and gloom sort of situation. What do? Oh, let's pass these laws like the Patriot Act.
Right.
Let's lock down on, people shouldn't have privacy anymore because that compromises national security. We got to know everything. And now you're seeing similar things with the cybersecurity bills being talked about in the House right now. They want to, push against your privacy rights. They want to make it so companies can give your data to the government and that the government can share it, with each other. They claim it's to fight this war, to fight this cyber war. And we're saying, well, we have this document that may or may not be, well, we think it's important.
Yeah.
We got to preserve these things that what are we defending, really?
How do you get a bunch of congressmen to really understand those differences and to understand what's really important? Because, look, a lot of them probably hardly even use computers. I'd say that's probably rude. But, yeah. They're probably not as tech savvy as most people watching this program.
It's true. It's true. I don't know if you remember during the whole SOPA HIPAA fight last year, the whole war cry was bring in the nerds.
Yeah.
Like, where are the nerds? There's this big software patent hearing yesterday, and you could tell that a lot of these congressmen, a lot of them are very smart and know a lot, but when you get to the internet or when you get to software, they're just completely clueless. They don't get how the internet works, how the infrastructure works, how these systems are in place.
How do we change that in our government, Bob? Any thoughts? I mean, what do we do to get these guys more tech savvy? Do we send them all to boot camp?
I think they tend to listen to whoever's giving them the most money and things like that, and so the tech industry is massive and has a ton of money. So I do find it weird that they aren't funneling more information their way.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how to get them interested, but they are an older group. And so it's like teaching your dad how to use a computer. And so I think we have to think about it in that way, is that, there's probably the money behind it. There's probably the people knocking at their doors and writing them letters saying that you need to know this. So how do we explain it to them the way that we would explain it to our dad? Like, you need to understand how to navigate this system of tubes.
Yeah,
so I don't know if I have the solution offhand, but I think that that's the way to do it, is to think about it in that sense.
I think every geek should do a month of service in a congressman's office. If you really believe in this.
There you go. Let's start that right now.
Let's start that right now. I'm on my way to DC tomorrow. I'm going to take my turn.
Perfect.
Let's talk about the next story I've got here, which is, again, an interesting hacking story. A guy who's working for Reuters now, a reporter, was not working at Reuters when this happened, but was at Tribune, a TV station, Tribune TV station, got laid off, and went and posted username and password to some of the Tribune servers. Turns out that Anonymous ended up using them to hack the LA Times. This sounds like stupidity to me, right? What's your take? Is this guy just dumb, or is he just didn't think it through, or was he really trying to be malicious?
In reading the email exchanges and things like that, it sounds a bit malicious to me, in the sense that I'm not quite sure how he was fired. What his motives were, but it seems like he got fired, he was kind of pissed about it, and he decided to sort of passively get back at them, saying, I'm going to put these out there, do with them what you will.
Yeah, what do you do as a corporation, Adi, if you, because you can't change everything when someone leaves. I mean, you change the locks on the door sometimes, take their keys away. You can't take their username and password. You can't, I mean, I guess you can take it away. But
I think you can.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you,
to some extent, it's like crazy if everybody has access to one company-wide password. There are inherent security issues in that.
Right,
in
that was kind of
place.
stupid, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of dumb design.
Yeah, but if someone leaves, you should take them off your system and probably change the locks. It's especially for something like online passwords, something that's all it takes is literally just mashing a couple other keys.
Yeah, I like the idea. This is another. I'm going to go back to the biometric thing, but our corporate system should be biometric based, right? Because then they'd know. Then I get my fake finger. So I don't know. It just this is just one of those stories. Like how I don't know. But
did you see the DOJ's response to that?
No, what did they say?
So they do a lot of awful things. And this is
yeah, the DOJ is a little off kilter sometimes. What do they do?
They in their press release about it, what they do is they just rattle off all the maximum penalties. So they're like, this guy could get 25 years in jail for these three counts, and they have to stop doing that. It's a form of it's scare tactics. It's forcing them to take these pleas or to take these smaller settlement or smaller sentences instead of fighting these cases, because they're like, oh well, on one hand it's 25 years in prison, or on the other hand it's maybe I could fight this, but you're giving me this 2-year sentence. We'll do that. The DOJ just really needs to. it's not responsible, I don't think.
It's almost like they pick these cases for the shock value of it, right?
Yeah.
So this is one that's like, well, it was the LA Times. It was anonymous that they gave it to. So, and everybody's all like, oh, anonymous, this huge hacking group. Do you think there's a lot of selective stuff like that goes on at these government agencies?
I think it's selective in the sense that they're really only going to take, because 90% of cases settle for the most part in criminal, and so you're really only going to push what you can win, and very rarely as on the federal level do you not win a case that big.
Yeah.
So it seems like these are very prominent, they're very scandalous, for us, but there's probably a lot behind it where they can prove it up fairly well. So pleading seems like the right thing to do because it's probably a losing battle, especially in the federal system against the government.
Yeah, they tend to hold most of the cards, right?
Yeah, and when it's taxpayer dollars at work too, you have to think about the fact that am I going to bring this case and spend taxpayer money on it? Can I win it? So it's probably something there.
Yeah.
You have a thing though where giving these passwords over, led to just defacing the front page of the LA Times. That's 5 years in prison according to the DOJ, while, for the physical analogy, vandalism, let's say, that's, it's either, I think it's either a misdemeanor or it's 2 or 3 years max in prison.
That's also state versus federal. Federal vandalism would carry the same charge as opposed to state vandalism. So there's a disparate, obviously, if you're on federal land and vandalize versus a state, which then seems sort of weird. But, state level vandalism is you're probably gonna pay a fine and walk out the door.
Yeah, I just think a 5-year penalty for something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's a little overblown.
They just need to reform this whole system.
It is.
So let's move on to this next story because we started talking about Facebook a little bit and their data privacy issues and how they use data to try and get you to buy things and look at ads. And Google actually came under fire this week again. For piracy issues, or not piracy, for privacy issues, this time with Street View. So, do you guys see these Street View cars? They're so cool.
Yeah.
I saw one driving around, I followed it around because I wanted to be on every single Street View that they took. I'm not sure if that actually worked or not, but as they were driving around, they started collecting Wi-Fi passwords and other data that was available on freely open networks, and they got busted, and they got fined $7 million and a bunch of other stuff. I think they got to run ads in newspapers. They've got to hold annual privacy seminars across company. But this is a company that institutionally is taking things from people. I mean, they take their data and they use it. Are they tone deaf on privacy, Adi?
A little bit,
Yeah.
to some extent. And I have a lot of friends at Google. A lot of great people work there, and they're very on top of it. But there's that balance between corporate interests and the don't be evil mentality that they claim to tout. And a lot of times those aren't the same thing. One thing about this, the settlement was they have to make these videos and they have to put these ads out there and create a lot of educational tools. But this just goes to show the disconnect. We were talking about this earlier between people like Attorney General and the lawmakers and actual technology. Part of the terms is the video has to show you how to do WEP encryption on
on your Wi-Fi router, right?
WEP is completely useless. Exactly. It is the most easily hackable encryption.
You say air
protocol.
snort? Yep, exactly.
And now they have to do this because of the settlement for the next, and throw an ad up there for the next 2 years.
And it was WEP, not WPA, right? That's so wild.
It's all of them, but it includes these ridiculous, outdated modes, and they're trying to kill open wireless, which we're big fans of.
I love open wireless. It's great. So just keep your systems locked down. You should teach you how to protect your systems on an open wireless network.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. What's your take on the Google privacy stuff, Bob?
I had a couple of thoughts. I mean, my first thought is, that car is going by at a certain speed to keep up with the road, and as fast as it's going, it's capturing all of this data, which is kind of cool if you think about it. I mean, you got to give them props.
Well, there's an engineer out there who thought the same thing. It's I'm capturing all this data because it's there.
And all of the data they captured, they probably went a little bit too far. Keeping track of open, hotspots and things like that, that seems reasonable. And so there's a certain level where like, this is cool and should be used for good, but they use their powers for evil.
But then probing in to get more data is probably a little bit over the line.
Yeah,
right?
they went too far. And a certain part of me is like, well, who doesn't lock up their wireless now, nowadays? So then a certain part of you is like, well, you're kind of asking for it. And then another part of me says, well, but if we were, again, to translate this to the real world and you left your door unlocked, are they deserving of being robbed? No, obviously not. So clearly, still. But the thing that really struck me was the punitive damages, because really punitive damages are supposed to do two things, and it's to punish them for doing something wrong, and to ensure that it doesn't happen again. And so with Google, $7 million and these videos, it's a drop in the bucket.
It's nothing.
It's nothing, and it's advertising for them, if anything. And $7 million, it's that's
Hi, we're
lunch.
Google and we care about you.
Yeah, I have friends who work at Google too, and I love Google, and I have no problems with it, and I love the leader, but this is not punishment for them, and it's not doing what it's legally intended to do.
So, and you don't think this stuff's going to help either, right?
No.
So, and what about, because to Google's point, they say it was some rogue engineer, some mid-level engineer decided to do this, wasn't really being supervised. That sounds like Google in general, right? But I like the idea of having these seminars to kind of get everybody on the same page. But they hire these best and brightest guys who are all really super smart, and part of being that level is like, I'm just going to go do it because I think it's cool. Is that corporate culture really, Adi, going to change?
I don't think so. They're still going to hire the best and brightest, and these are people who are like making startups in college. These are people who are going to be pushing the boundaries. I think it's good, and I think people should be more privacy aware, especially people on the engineering side. That's a general positive thing, but I really don't think this settlement is going to do that. I don't think a week of privacy
class,
privacy class, yeah, privacy homework is like, come on.
It's like
really?
traffic school. You're going to traffic school. It's like, come on, we all still speed. Real quick on this story, I'll ask each of you. Bob, I'll start with you. Do you trust Google?
I don't, but I'm okay with not trusting them. I don't. I'm sort of relativist with like, if I'm fine on my couch doing my thing, they can have my life and they can do what they want with it as long as it doesn't affect me sitting on my couch. But I know that's not a good outlook. I know that shouldn't be the outlook.
Right.
As far as protecting and upholding our personal rights and the Constitution and all that. But that is kind of how I see it. I'm okay with having a search engine that gives me everything I want and I never have to move.
How about you, Adi? Do you trust them?
I use Gmail. I use, their products. It's great that they're releasing transparency reports now, and like they're showing how much they're actually giving the government and how much, they're actually catering to these bigger interests. That being said, they do have a lot of data, and they do a lot of stupid things every so often, and we are more than happy to yell at them for it.
Yeah, it's just Google's world, and we're only living in it. And now their next product comes along, right? It's Google Glass.
Yeah.
And Google Glass starting a little bit of a wave of controversy, I guess, this week around you can wear it and record everything, right? Record stuff that's going on. I can record, you can be in a coffee shop, and I can be recording what somebody else is doing, and I can be posting that. Are these privacy concerns, Adi, are they real with Google Glass?
Yeah, they're real. It's something that it challenges the social norm that you're not being filmed everywhere you go. And to some extent, even if it were people's own cameras filming everywhere, like that's even a little more, swallowable.
Yeah.
Now that it's like data and videos and photos that are just going straight to Google and then straight to the internet, all of a sudden you have all this we'll call it surveillance that's in the hands of Google, and that's really, you're taking pictures of people in public without their, their knowledge. or
Well,
their
but
permission.
it reminds me of going out as a tourist to some backwoods place and taking a picture of somebody who feels like you're stealing their soul. I mean, it's kind of a cultural thing. That,
Sure.
Look, this stuff is here to stay, right? Right, Bob. How do you think society reacts, and do we get over it at some point? It just becomes part of the norm, just like someone takes our picture and we don't feel like they're stealing our soul.
I thought it was really interesting that one of the articles I read, they were talking about how there were some places saying you can't wear Google Glass in here.
Right, like coffee shops.
Yeah, we'll kick you out. Right. And saying that a lot of the comments were saying that that's a form of discrimination, which I found really weird and interesting as far as a cultural take on that. That's now technology is definable as a something you can discriminate against.
Yeah.
Which it really isn't. I mean, it's saying we don't allow cell phones in here, which they do at concerts all the time. So it seemed weird.
No recording. Right. That worked out.
Yeah. That this glasses, not being able to wear this glasses, is a form of technological discrimination, which is, as technology becomes more integrated with our person, it does become more of you're discriminating against me as a person, as
who I am.
Yeah. As a geek, basically. That because this is so integrated with who I am, and as it gets more internalized, where do you draw that line with people who don't want to be filmed?
Where do you draw the line? I mean, what do you think? And do we end up with, smoking and non-smoking sections? Glass and non-glass sections?
I don't think the ban's the right move. I mean, like that. Bans are rarely ever the right move, and they don't work. Usually, I think we'll tackle these questions as soon as this thing rolls out, and I think this sort of feedback we're getting from the internet right now is people are like, holy crap, Google Glass is really kind of cool, but also I don't really want to be filmed all the time. People are aware of the pros and cons, and we'll get to a point where we figure out the right balance.
All right, you guys, you saw it here first. I'm copywriting this image. What do you think? Copyright this image. Can you see that? There we go. No Google Glasses, just like no smoking. I'm going to make millions on it. And I don't know. I think we will change as a society to accept it eventually. But there will very much like cell phones. I mean, there are people who still think cell phones are intrusive and people shouldn't be using them, and they should go back to teletype or whatever.
I think it's legally interesting too, because we vary from state to state, and California has specific likeness laws. And so the idea that I don't consent, even if you put the sign that says by being in this room you consent to filming, and I'm like, well, no, by being here I'm consenting to standing here.
Being here, right,
I'm not consenting to filming, so I'm going to stand here and flip you the bird. So I'm unusable footage, But I think that it's weird to see how it will work in something like that, in California, where it's like, I don't consent to you filming me.
That's a good point.
And my likeness, and using my likeness. It's one thing to film, but it's another thing to use it. What are they going to use this stuff for? So that'll be really interesting as far as it moves forward and becomes more prevalent.
Yeah, it's just the whole concept of as we bring this sort of augmented reality, and as we turn ourselves more into walking technology, where do we end up? What is it? Another area of technology that I've been fascinated by, just because I think there's so many things that it can do, are 3D printers. And so we saw the story this week where a 3D printed implant actually replaced 75% of a patient's skull. They've already done a jaw and this sort of titanium stuff. And this is, to me, the next level of our cybernetic future. Are you ready to be 3D printed?
I want a tail.
I want a tail.
I want a tail. If they're making 3D parts, I really want a tail. I was actually shocked when I read this, because I was like, why? I don't know why this is just now happening. Because I'm one of those weird people that's really involved in forensics, and we've been using 3D printers to make heads for as long as I can remember. The idea that
so you can shoot holes in them and see what happens?
The actual
No, I'm serious. Is that what you do?
Well, that and also doing replicas and things like that.
Instead of the artist rendering?
Yeah. So when you don't want to work on an actual figure and you want to know how we know what the Iceman looked like, how we know all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so the idea of actually putting what you've made into somebody I felt like it wasn't so far off that I read it and I was like, is this news? Why is this just now happening? Like it feels like this should have been news forever ago. You know, the idea of coming up with a sterile polymer that they could use.
Yeah, that's like bone.
It seemed like it was easy to do and should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to find, just like with Khan Academy, where Khan Academy now we have the world's best math teacher is making classes that everybody can use. I want somebody who has the world's best knee, so that if I need to get my knee replaced, I want the world's best knee on there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are privacy concerns on that too, right, Adi? I mean, I don't know. Given my knee.
I don't want to be doom and gloom this whole time. I mean,
You're not.
the government for me doom and gloom. I think 3D printing is really cool, and I'm excited for the future. I think one of the real concerns is people are trying to curb free speech by banning certain types of 3D printing. Like we had those stories of people who are able to 3D print guns, and as soon as you say, okay, you're allowed to send file information about this, this, and this, but not this, this, and this, that goes into free speech territory, and we don't want any of that. We want to encourage this sort of all sorts of 3D printing innovation.
Again, it's an example of society and technology getting ahead of society's norms, just like it is with Google Glass and with other things.
Yeah.
I think the ultimate area of this 3D printing, I didn't even think about this until I saw this story, but I want to bring up David Brin again. I guess he's on my mind. But if you know he did this great book, Kiln People, which really the premise of it is every day you basically print a copy of yourself with your brain and you send it off to do tasks and it falls apart later. Just that I thought was totally completely out of the realm. I was like, wow, that guy's out there. Now with 3D printing, I mean, if I can print bones and I can print, I could print a person and with a tail.
With a tail.
I'm super
or wings,
excited.
or
Wings, or wow, that's going to make Comic-Con really fun.
Yeah.
Think about the cosplay you can do with that. All right, let's move on to talk a little bit about Facebook and hashtags. I don't know if you saw this, but hashtags being, obviously big in Twitter. Facebook wants that. Is Facebook trying to be Twitter, Adi? What's going on here?
Kind of. I mean, I love the interplay between the two and how they're kind of
Love-hate.
It's totally a love-hate relationship, and
Twitter envy.
But that could be what it is.
Look, seriously, it's weird because Facebook, I think, to me, has a certain part of my life, and Twitter is, I use it very differently, don't you? You don't use it for the same thing, right?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Facebook, and I kind of feel like this is more gloss that they're putting on data mining, which goes on behind the scenes. That's what it seems like to me, and I'm actually kind of surprised that this wasn't something that they just rolled out and didn't tell anybody about. And they were like, surprise, we have hashtags now.
Well, they haven't rolled it out yet. It's still in the lab. They're planning on rolling it out. You're surprised they actually told us in advance of something they were thinking of doing. I got it. You're right. That's how out of character for Facebook. Maybe they are learning. Maybe Google can change too.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, Adi, I don't know how you use Facebook, but I use it to keep up with my friends.
Totally.
Whereas the hashtag thing is let's see what everyone's talking about. I don't care what other people are talking about on Facebook.
Honestly, the only reason me or my friends use hashtags on Facebook is completely ironically or as a joke.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think they might be trying a little too hard.
Yeah. Well, I guess they got to do something, right? I mean, there's all these stories about people are spending less time on Facebook, people are using it for less. Now they're adding in graph search, they're adding in these big pictures.
Yeah.
They're going to add, we don't need another Twitter.
Yeah, it seems like somebody from a year or two ago went to Tumblr and said, what's really popular right now? Oh, people like pie graphs. Those are funny.
People like pie graphs.
The hashtags seem to be popular with the kids these days.
Right.
So, it seems like they're putting these sort of glosses over Facebook to keep people interested, but they're not really in touch with the cutting edge of how we're using technology.
That's a good point. It's like they're adopting something that's been around for a while. Why don't you go out and be innovative?
Yeah.
Very good point. Last story I want to talk about is kind of a future of the TV story. Either of you guys use Hulu?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, Hulu's got a full-on ad load. It's not a full-on ad load, but it's close. CBS not on Hulu. CBS now saying that they're going to make, they are making some of their shows available on iOS with a full ad load. Do you guys, look, we see a lot of ads on TV. I skip them. Shh. Do you skip the ads?
I don't get ads.
Why not?
The way that I get my television doesn't have ads.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay. I'm not going
leave
to
it at that.
invade your privacy by asking you how in particular to do that, although I think I know the answer. But think about watching shows on iOS with a full-on ad load.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem right to have all those ads on a mobile device, but I guess a screen's a screen, right, Adi?
Screen's a screen. I mean, like, I'm just angry it's not out for Android. Being an Android person myself.
Yeah, I'm an Android user too, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have to figure out some way to monetize, and they keep going towards this pervasive ad model, which works to some extent, but we'll see how long
I
it
think
lasts.
the interruption ad model is going to change more quickly than we might think. And I think putting it out in things like this is an example where if you're sitting on TV, you can watch it, get up and use it. But if you're holding it in your hand to watch it, it is much more intrusive. It's much more of an interruption.
Have you seen with the new Samsung phone, the whole look away, when you look away, it pauses?
Yeah.
I wonder how that'll play into
Oh yeah, when I look away,
advertisements.
run the ads. Don't pause it. Run
Yeah,
the
don't
ads.
pause.
I'm going to put it down over here. I'm going to go over here. Oh, the ads, I can watch CSI again.
They won't make you they won't let you make a call or do anything unless you watch this ad. It's going to be it.
Oh, you're right. You're going to have to watch it.
You're going to have to watch this ad.
Wow. CBS and Samsung are going to make our lives hell.
You have to give them credit though for at least putting it out there.
Sure.
And maybe they'll scale back the ads once they get enough feedback. But putting an app out there, really embracing this idea of streaming their content rather than forcing people to come to the television, which is just not going to happen. You have to give them credit for at least stepping out there.
I agree, because in the end, the reason why people end up watching TV without ads, and I'm going to use that as a euphemism, is because basically they can't get it the way they want it when they want it on the screens they want.
Exactly.
If somebody gave you what you wanted in a way that was comfortable and easy for not you individually, but you in general, you would do it. I mean, we see it with
support
iTunes.
it.
Once
Yeah.
iTunes came out, pay $1 for a song or whatever, it's fine. And I think that's where you're right. This is a good step forward.
It makes me want to embrace it because I want to encourage it.
Right.
As a user, like with iTunes, it's like I like this indie artist. I want to support them. Therefore, I will give them all my money. As opposed to I don't want to give all my money to the big signed label because it's not really going to the artist. I like the idea. I want to give them credit for trying. They get a gold star.
They get a
So
gold star
with
for that.
this app though, if they said, all right, if you pay $5 a month, we won't show ads, would you pay the $5?
I would. Well, I tell you, I would now. Actually, my wife would, because she's already. I mean, she goes up and buys the full season of Survivor. Even though I've got a DVR, I'm recording it. She can skip the ads. She still pays the $20 or whatever on iTunes. And I'm like, we're already doing that.
Yeah.
So, it's a really good question though, because somebody's got to pay for all this stuff, right? House of Cards is great, but CBS does 20 or 30 new shows every season, and it costs a lot of money to do that. Someone's got to pay for it. And the interesting thing about this app is it doesn't give you the show right away. It's only a day later. It's 1 to 8 days. So, but it still counts for ratings and a +3 and all that. It's a long story. So, one last question for you guys, and then we're going to wrap this episode of Download It Up. Big question. If you look at the way TV is evolving, and Adi, I'll start with you. Do you think we get to a point, if so when everything's available all on demand on all of our screens, and this whole concept of it's not here and it's over here, and do I pay, does that go away ever, or is it going to be this mucked up world for a long time?
I think I think House of Cards is a good example. I think it's really going to set the pace for how to compete in this sphere. We were talking earlier. I watched House of Cards literally that first weekend it came out. I just sat down and watched all 12 episodes, and it was awesome. It was so great. It was so nice being able to do that and being able to interface with people and say, "Oh my God, this is great." That being said, you do get a lot of product placement and a lot of in your face. Because the question is, how do you fund that?
Right, exactly.
And it's like, oh, of course, Congressman, play your PlayStation for 5 minutes on screen. But I think it'll go more towards an on-demand model because that's how we live.
Yep. Slow or fast? Think it's going to happen fast or happen slow?
Hopefully fast.
Hopefully fast. So you want it to happen fast. Bob, what about you?
I think it's going to go fast. I think Hollywood tends to move quicker than the TV execs, but they'll push them along.
Right.
And I think, the forerunners of this was like Felicia Day and her.
Talking about the Guild guys?
And starting these web presence, and that really, Hollywood was like, oh, this is a whole market here. They were really tapping into the idea that there's an underground movement for, on demand. We want these niche shows with Arrested Development. I mean, we're getting a show that was never going to come back, and we've already been
Veronica
promised.
Mars is coming back too, right?
We've already been promised 2 seasons in a movie, and 6 seasons in a movie for Community. So I think that it's going to come. I think it's going to come fast, and I think that I'm really happy and thinking positively that everybody's going to embrace it.
I hope everybody embraces it, and I hope we all figure out how to make money at it. That's the big thing as well. That's it for this episode of Downloaded. Thanks a lot. I want to thank Bob, and I want to thank Hadi for coming over. This was awesome. Great discussion. If you have any questions or comments, you can always post them down below. We'll keep the conversation going. Until next time, you've been watching Downloaded.